Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for being here today with me.
Thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Let's start with introducing your program to our audience. Can you tell us like what the program is and who it is for, what results it creates for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's called Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization. It's a mouthful, but it's MO for short. It's about 7 years ago. Amazon withheld some royalties for no reason whatsoever. And I never spoke to a human or heard from a human. And so I got upset with them and I decided that I was just going to sell my books directly to my readers. And it worked really well. And about 15 minutes after I realized it was working really well, I thought, I bet other authors will want to know how to do this also. So I put everything that I had learned through that process into the program. And it basically teaches authors how to take more control over their career and their book sales by not relying completely on Amazon. And the engine behind it all is a methodical market testing process so that you know what to put in your ads and you also know what to put in your books and what to put in your business because you know what resonates with people in your market by doing the market testing. So there's the people that we serve are typically authors who have written either nonfiction titles in support of their business, or we also support authors who write fiction titles and make their money by selling copies of their books.
Yeah. And also, as we were chatting right before we started recording, there are also business owners who are finding your program, like myself, very, very useful because it helps us clarify the messaging and see how we can tweak our value and value we create for our clients and express it in our copy on the website and in the ads too. So your program is really, really incredible. I really
Thank
love
you. Yeah, it's interesting because as experts, I mean, people who open businesses and write books are experts in their field. And it's surprising how little we know about what the average person in our market actually thinks. I've worked with hundreds of business owners over the years, and 90% of us have the wrong idea about what their market really wants. And it's not just the specific ideas that matter, it's also the specific words that we use to describe it. So those two things together, it turns out to be really, really important. And the only way to really know what they want is to test it. There's no other way to do it that I've found.
Yes, absolutely. What's the better way to show is what is to see the data that's behind all of this. So yeah, I really love seeing like those the clear results, and then and then you have no doubts, and then you have the exact wording that's you will not miss if you use it. So yeah, cool. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your program and your process of scaling it. How many years ago have you launched it for the first time, or months?
The first iteration, I think, was in 2017, so
Oh,
it was a
wow.
while ago. The way that I began it was as basically a high ticket one-on-one kind of a process. And I was pretty selective with the authors I chose. I wanted more established authors because I wanted to make sure that the process was transferable to other authors, but I wanted to make sure that we were testing this out on books that were high quality books, right? So this is a marketing process, and your marketing process is always, always, always at the mercy of your product and the resonance and market fit that your product has. So those are early days, and then I think probably a couple of years in, maybe 3 years in, I had enough confidence in the process that I could open it up to a more broad audience of authors. And authors come in all shapes and sizes and all levels of business experience and marketing savvy and product savvy. So we had the tools developed that would allow us to reach a broader market. And the other thing that happened is that over that period of time, we had a number of authors achieve really impressive results using the process. So that period of going slowly, it turned out to be really important because it allowed it allowed me to continue working on the product and working on the process so that what I had to sell was legit. Like it was useful and it had social proof. It had people who have achieved significant results using it. And really, that's the thing that unlocked the scale. There are actually two things that unlock scale. The first is results. It's always results. In a business like this, an information product kind of business or a service kind of business, professional services, information products, it's down to results. It's down to, did you make the person's life or business or both better? Are they better off by virtue of having used your process, your method, followed your teaching, done what you recommend? That's the key ingredient to scaling, is the thing at the center of your business. So if you're in doubt about, should I work hard on my product or work hard on my marketing, you should work hard on both. But if you need to prioritize one or the other, product is the first one. The second thing I did is that I took it from a more high ticket offer, and this was specific to my market, and lowered the price to allow a broader market access to it. So our price is now currently, we have two products. One runs for $1,000 and one runs for $2,000. And that's down from a $10,000 or a $6,000 purchase price. So that change in price opens up an exponential increase in the number of customers who are willing to take a chance on your program, even with all of the social proof and the results. Those two things ended up being key to the scaling. And in the background, what's happening is the successful clients were talking to each other. They were talking to their friends. They're like, hey, and I was getting emails like, hey, so and so said that I should take your course. Can you give me the link? I want to buy this. So your customers go find new customers for you when you get the core thing right, which is the product. And right is, we never feel like it's right. Like I'm working on it right now. I'm in the process of updating and improving it right now as we speak, 7 years into it, because things change. But when you really focus on getting results for people and putting yourself in their shoes and walking them step by step from A to B, it pays off because they'll go find other customers for you and bring them to you, and they want to be your affiliate, and they want to have you on podcasts and whatnot. So those are the two keys, I think, for me. Was starting slowly to develop social proof and improve my process. And then once I had a credible list of clients who had achieved really significant results, I broadened the offer to allow earlier stage people to benefit from it as well.
Thank you so much, and thank you for highlighting the fact that it's always a process. Like we are always working on ways to improve our program. That's for sure. So tell me a little bit about that first launch of an actual program. So you went from working it with potentially given like small groups like into this like all of a sudden large cohort, right? Like how did that happen for you in terms of like you had everything pre-recorded, and like what did you see like once there was all of a sudden like this large number of people who were interacting with the videos? And the other part of my question is, how was it for you personally, like all of a sudden in a way losing control over, okay, like now there are so many people interacting with my materials?
Great question. So in the beginning, it was just me on Zoom with clients, and that lasted, I don't know, a few months. And it was just such a pain in the butt that I hated it. And so I said, well, I'm going to change my model from a one-on-one to a group coaching model with curriculum. So I made the program in I think the actual program inside of Kajabi, I probably put together in 2017. And that's what I sold high ticket with weekly group coaching calls. Right. So this was the first evolution of the curriculum, soup to nuts. It walked them through everything. Then we would meet on Friday, and then I would just pay attention to the mistakes that they were making and the things that weren't clear and the places where I had misspoken or when things had changed. And a couple of years later, it came time to update. In fact, the number of required updates had accumulated to the point where, and my learning had accumulated to the point where I changed the process almost entirely. And so when I did that, I felt like I had enough knowledge about all the different ways that people could screw it up, like all the different mistakes that you can make, that I felt more confident releasing it to a larger number of people. So in that new version of the program, which I think, I don't know, maybe that would have been 2020 or 2021, um, it was geared to accommodate all of those questions, problems, mistakes, and changes. And I tried to make that very clear, to people. But I will say that when and the people started kind of flooding in at the lower price point because they'd heard about the program before. I had turned a lot of people away because they weren't ready yet, and now suddenly that they could get in. So instantly, there's a lot of people running around inside the program. And what I will say is that it became obvious like a day after launch that I wasn't done with the program because things that I thought were very clear were not very clear to people who didn't have my experience. It's back to you're too close to the problem. You don't think the same way that a newbie thinks about the problem. So then there was a pretty intense about 2 week period after that the program launched where I was updating things and clarifying things and restating things and revisiting and offering just more support about, okay, here's where we are in the process. Here's where we're going in the process. And the second thing that I became more painfully aware of is that I was used to working with pretty high level professionals. And when you scale your course, there are fewer high level professionals in any given world. And you get into earlier stage people, folks who just don't have the same acumen or the same set of skills that they bring to the game. And so the number of very, very basic questions that you have to answer and re-answer is significantly higher when you scale. So there you're looping back around back into the product because you accumulate a list of these things that you thought were perfectly clear in the curriculum, but were not perfectly clear to people out in the wild. And so you have to come back around and adjust those lessons again to make those items more clear. And then you're not done when that's done because the world changes on you. And in my case, we use software tools to make this business happen for authors, and the software tools change, and the advertising, not only the advertising platforms change, but advertising costs change. So then the structure of your business needs to change. The structure of the business that you're helping people to build needs to change. And so you're constantly looping back to product, looping back to product, looping back to product. So there's no then it scaled and everything was rosy and rainbows and unicorns and the money just rolled in and now I just sip Mai Tais all day. It's not really like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll come to the mindset piece in a second, but what I wanted to follow up it is on you mentioned something really key, that you were paying attention to the questions that were coming in and what was unclear and where the clients needed a bit more support. Technically, how were you tracking that, and how in the end how were you deciding, okay, these are the changes that actually need to happen, here is the balance between providing information that will be helpful versus overburdening people with some information that would overwhelm them? How are you making these decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think what that's at the core of that question is there's some amount of basic knowledge that every service provider or course creator has to assume their clients are coming in with. Mm-hmm. And so a great example is I'm happy to walk you through how to set up a Facebook ad. But I assume you know how to go to Facebook and enter your name and your address and your credit card so you can open an ad account if you don't have one already. So I draw a line someplace where, because you could trace in a technical kind of course, you could trace it all the way back to, okay, what kind of computer should you buy before you build your author, right? It gets ridiculous, and not everybody needs that. Um, so I just tried to pay attention to which kinds of questions was I getting, and the way I resolved it is I tried to scare away customers that are really technically illiterate. Like they're just technologically not that experienced. And it's normally, in my particular business, it's normally older authors who've lived most of their lives without technology. And now they're thrust into a situation where they're trying to do something that's heavily technology oriented. And many of those folks struggled. So I had a choice to make. I could either dumb everything down to the very, very basics and, I don't know, spend 2 weeks of curriculum time getting them up to speed, which 95% of our clients did not need and would not want and would be frustrated with. So you have to just make an assumption. Like if you're not at this level technically, like if you're afraid of if you call your grandson over to check your email for you, this is probably not going to be for you, right? So when you draw that line, I found that it is important to tell people what to expect because they will self-select. If you
Yeah.
say, this is advanced, it is pretty technical, there's a lot of mouse clicks to making this work right. So you're going to click the mouse. If you don't like clicking the mouse, if you don't like doing computer work, this is probably not for you. So it's sort of spreading the word in your marketing that this is what to expect inside the program. And then once people are in the program, you don't have to waste time with that remedial education. But I think it's a judgment call that you have to make. And I think you make it once and see how it goes. And you have options. Like we've toyed with the idea of like, oh, internet basics for authors. I mean, this is the preliminary course that gets them ready for the thing. Ultimately, I decided not to do that because I would rather chew on broken glass than teach an internet basics course. Um, but you can remediate those kind of entry requirements with another course offering if you want to or have the energy to. I will say that it's hard enough to make a great program without really diluting your effort. So it's a great question. It's down to judgment and then iterate. Don't be afraid to iterate.
Yeah, absolutely. And sticking with your ideal client and not being tempted by allowing just about anybody to join the program. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I would love to hear is in your process of scaling the program, were there any mistakes or things that you did something and once it's been done, you were just like, oh no, like that was not the right way to approach something. Like tell us a little bit about some things like missteps in the
Yeah,
process.
great. That's a great question. So I'm a tester. I test things, and not everything you test works. That's why you test it. It's the only way I found to actually grow because the odds of getting it right the first time are really low. That's why there's like a 95% failure rate. Even this venture capitalists, the smartest business people on planet Earth, the most successful people on planet Earth, when they invest in a new startup, that startup has like a 5% chance of succeeding because it's hard. So you have to test, and not every test idea works out. And some of those tests, like you're putting real customers into this test, like you think you need to go in a certain direction. And so you put a really good faith effort into making that as good as you can make it. And sometimes it just doesn't work. Or the biggest drawback for me, for my particular way of doing this, is that sometimes customers get confused about what they're supposed to be doing. Normally, the things that I test are on the way into the program, so the marketing elements and the way that I'm presenting it, or the particular criteria for entry, and as those evolve, you'll always have people who remember the way it was before and now find themselves confused about what you're doing in the present. What I've discovered is it's fine. That's okay. That's a small number of people, even if it's a couple hundred people, in comparison to the number of people you'll be able to serve in the future with this newer and better way of doing things. So I don't, um, things that tend to get people upset, changes in pricing, either direction. You go from higher to lower, sometimes the people who paid a higher price are upset.
Right.
Or if you go from lower to higher, people who are in the pipeline, when you make the change, are like, hey, what's going on? Why are you raising the price? I know you told us you're raising the price, but why are you raising the price? The one thing that I've done fairly consistently throughout this is that whenever I have changed the price, I've also changed the contents of the offer so that a person who purchased at a higher price got a different thing. Maybe it's lifetime coaching at a high ticket, or 8 weeks coaching at a high ticket versus the lower ticket price of $1,000 or so. That doesn't come with coaching because we have to spend our time on these coaching calls and pay coaches to go do that. It's an extra, it's an upsell. So then a person who bought at a high ticket is still showing up on the coaching calls years later and not paying for them because they've already paid already. They understand that, yeah, the curriculum is available for less money, but I've gotten years of coaching that that all these other folks are would have to pay for month to month. So it's important when you make changes and when you test things. It's important to test pricing. It's important that when you do, you're making the offer a little bit different, so that if the same person saw both offers, they wouldn't feel like they were being manipulated in one versus the other, because the what you get for the different amounts of money would be different between the two price points. So I try always to keep that in the forefront. The other thing that it's not just outright pricing, but also payment plans, and those are important as well, because there's people just have different buying behaviors. Just make those things as clear as possible, but don't be afraid to test them. Don't be afraid to test them.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so now let's shift gears just a tiny bit and look at the entire process through the lens of what changes have you seen in yourself, as the program went from you working with people individually to now this being a program that is evergreen program, and now you have coaches that are also supporting students on the coaching calls. What changes have you seen kind of in the way that you were thinking about the program and the way that you approach things? Because it's growing a business, it's a personal growth journey anyway. So I just want to look at things from a different perspective now.
That's such a good question. Every business breakthrough I've ever enjoyed, ever, and every life breakthrough I've ever enjoyed, ever, is preceded by a mental shift first. Like, the big change first occurs between my ears, and then I can go make it happen out in the world. So it's always a new way of looking at things, or I become aware that I have made an assumption, which may not be a valid assumption. And so then I test that assumption. And lo and behold, in many cases, my assumptions were not valid. And I didn't even know that I was making those assumptions. So what's the process that I use for that? The first thing is that early on, I felt like I had to have all the answers. I had to be the person who has all the answers already. But life is a complicated thing, and business is complicated, and everything is always changing. So, and there's an element of ego involved, and I need to be the person with all the answers. Where I've shifted over the years is that I don't have to be the person who has all the answers, but I'm always looking for better answers. So I have some answers to some questions right now, but I'm pretty sure that I can improve on them. So that's the first step, is my mindset is different, which is I'm always looking for a better answer than the one I currently have. And I'm always trying to question, what have I assumed that wasn't necessarily valid? Like, what rules have I heard other people tell me in the stuff that I've listened to that aren't actually rules and don't actually even apply to me? And how can I test whether or not those assumptions are valid? And then that's the first thing. The second thing is you can't just do that in a vacuum. Like, you only know the things that you know. So it's been extremely helpful, like driving to pick the kids up from school or going to the grocery store or while I'm working out at the gym. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always listening to, and it's not always just business podcasts. In fact, it's usually not. It's more, along the lines of personal growth or just stuff I'm interested in. And there's invariably some interesting tidbit that will just spark my mind, and I'll start chewing on that, and I'll go, huh. I wonder if I can include this in my marketing funnel, if this clarifying this approach, or if I do this thing differently. So always being on the lookout for a better way, having the mindset of testing my way to better instead of having to have the perfect solution before I get going, and then continuing to bring in new information continuously to feed my brain so that I can think about things in a different way and shift my perspectives. Those have all been really important because your business will only grow as much and as fast as you grow as a person. That may sound woo-woo to some people, but I really think it's true. Like, your business is an extension of your brain. Like, the business you build comes from the brain you have, and we need to continuously be developing the brain.
Absolutely. I love this. I love this. And I am experiencing the same thing where uh initially I was so focused on making sure that everything is perfect, everything is done and kind of just like polished, and like there is bow on top. Like, even like with the very first time I launched, which was like over 10 years ago, like I pre-built the website, the membership site, the materials, everything. And the moment people came in, the beta group, the early birds, like I knew the second like the first question popped up, I knew that like I have to scratch like the entire thing, and like it needs to be redone immediately
Yeah.
for people to have results. But like, but it's a shift from having everything perfect to like I'm testing, and like I'm allowed to fail, and most of what I test will fail. Like that allows me to move forward now and uh, yeah,
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
progress, because otherwise it's paralyzing and it's not productive at all.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I will say that um, people often take that the wrong way. Like, they'll say, "Oh, I'm just going to throw this together quickly and get it out the door and launch, and then I'll iterate." But when you have customers in your business and you're running ads and you're dealing with customer service and you're also dealing with curriculum, you're not going to iterate that fast. It's not going to be super quick. So people think they're going to put a crappy product out the door and just fix it over time later. It's not how it works. It doesn't, you just won't do that. You won't have time to do that. So, and this is really hard. This is why business is a character building exercise. I work my butt off on the curriculum. Like, I worked 7 days a week for 7 months doing this recent update. And it's not more lessons, it's fewer lessons. And it's not longer lessons, it's shorter ones. And it's like not less engaging, but more engaging. I worked my tail off. And um, I finished that last lesson, I think maybe in June or July of this year. And guess what? I'm doing revisions right now. And it was hard because I was tired. At the end of that, I was tired. I was baked. And yet the beat goes on, life marches on. There's stuff that I thought was perfectly clear that wasn't perfectly clear, even after all of that effort and all that time. And so I'm iterating back again. So it's work your tail off on each iteration, not so much that you're paralyzed, but move forward, but do your best. Like uh, your competition is not doing their best. They're doing this, oh, put some crap out the door and see if I can market it to scale. You can maybe do that if you're, you can do that for a year, maybe. but your real differentiator is the product. And so you have to be prepared to put a massive amount of effort in there. And then a couple of weeks later, put a massive amount of effort into the updates to the thing you just built, and that's hard. It's really hard for a lot of people. I think we all get into the business because the idea, like, you make something once and sell it a bunch of times and it scales and it grows. There's Mai Tais on the beach. It's not Mai Tais on the beach. It's like, as the thing grows,
It'd be
there's more to
boring
do.
anyway.
That's right. As the thing grows, there's more to do, not less. And it's more of the boring stuff, not less. Like, you want to graduate into the super advanced, the secret room where they're like, oh, you tried all the basic stuff. No, come over here where it's super advanced and easy. That's not a thing. It's just better and better and better at the basics. So that's a real character challenge, that doing your best on the first version and then clearing that up baggage out of your mind and being objective about the data coming back where it's not clear. There's questions about this, and people are doing this wrong, and this thing changed, and you need to update. And so you put the same level of effort into the updates as well. So
We follow up question on this. So with program now being so big, and like there are other people involved, like your coaches who are doing the calls, how do you keep track of questions that are coming in? How do you what data points do you use to make decisions about, okay, like this part needs to be updated, or like this part I could make changes. Like, yeah, when platform changes, like when Facebook changes, like we all know that. But
yeah,
structurally and curriculum wise, how do you, like, what data do you rely on day to day, like these days, to make those decisions?
beautiful question. In every single lesson, there's a link that says, in the lesson description area, that says, do you have feedback for this lesson? Let us know. And it clicks, and they fill out a form, and they can type their question into the lesson, or their feedback for the lesson. That gets cataloged. And so over time, those responses accumulate, and you can start to see trends. It doesn't even need to be a trend necessarily. If you see a question and you go, oh, that needs to be fixed, so for sure that makes the list. Or if it's just one person confused, but they just missed the prior sentence, you're like, okay, I don't need to change anything there. But if it's 4 people confused about that same sentence, maybe I need to change the sentence. So every lesson has a feedback form that gets populated onto a spreadsheet, so I can see all of the feedback for every individual lesson. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's not just lesson feedback that people have. It's like questions, like, do you need help? So that's a separate thing, a trouble ticket. And so the trouble ticket gets submitted, and they fill out a form for that, and that trouble ticket is cataloged. And so our coaches receive emails about it, and they answer the question. And my assistant also reads those and catalogs them. So we start to see, is there a trend? Like, 7 people have asked about this thing. Maybe this needs to be addressed. And then the third way is that there are live coaching calls. And it's great because my coaches are all human. And so we get annoyed when we hear the same question over and over again. And then if a coach has heard the same question 3 times in a week, maybe she'll say, hey, will you please fix this? I'm so tired of answering this question. So those are the 3 main feedback loops: is the lesson feedback itself, and the trouble tickets, and then coaches. And then the 4th thing is people just email you like, hey, what's the story with this?
Yeah.
And so that sort of falls in the same bucket as a trouble ticket. But that's really important, that you have some organizational structure and some system that's as automated as it can be, but ultimately you have to adjudicate all of these elements that come back in, but you need some structure within which to do it. And the way I approach the updates is I build a big spreadsheet that has each lesson listed, and it's like, what's the lesson? What's the topic? What's the feedback on it? What are we going to do? What timestamp? Do we change anything? Are there new handouts to go with it? Is there a new checklist that we have to produce? I need to script a new video. Here's a link to the new script. So the whole thing is quite organized, because there are like hundreds of details that you need to keep track of. And I just methodically work my way through them. When you look at the whole spreadsheet, like, oh gosh, that's intimidating. But you just go one cell at a time, and before you know it, you're through it. But it's really important to have organization around that. And if you don't, if it's just yellow stickies that fall off your desk and whatever else, but I'm not making fun of anybody. This is how I used to do stuff. Like, on my hand, oh, change this thing, and then wash my hand in the restroom. Like, oh no, what was I supposed to change? So finally, I got to the point where I put some systems in place to help me with this. That's really important.
Yeah, I love this. Like, as a data geek, like this is to me, and like every time I'm just like, okay, like I need to wrap this up. Like I have one more. I have one more before we wrap this up.
Yeah,
In terms
sure.
of, I would love to hear, like you described, like this really beautiful like system for keeping track of feedback. Like, do you have any other like examples of systems that like you use that really, really helped you like as you were scaling? Like something, like, also something geeky like that.
Yeah, so the systems that are really important to you that are really intimately tied to scaling are the systems that people are exposed to on the way in. So your advertising, your landing page, your webinar, your email sequence, your sales page for the course purchase. Each of those is a customer facing asset. And I have a rule in the businesses that I help authors to build, and a rule in my own business, which is that if there's anything that you're putting in front of a customer, you need to be iterating and optimizing it over time. So each of my sign up pages is in the middle of an A/B test always. There's never a time when I'm not A/B testing the sign up page. The same thing is true for my email sequences. It's a little more complicated with an email sequence to do, depending on your email provider. But I'm constantly iterating on that. I'm looking at open rates. I'm looking at click rates, and open rates are harder now to get a feel for what's going on. It's mainly about click rates, but open rates they'll still give you some clue because you'll see how the emails perform relative to each other. So one will be lagging all the other emails. So like that one needs work. So I'm iterating that. I use Wistia for the webinar video because they have an engagement graph, and you can see where people drop off in your webinar. And you go, what am I talking about here? Oh, I'm boring the pants off of people because I'm saying this, I'm down in the weeds and people don't care. So I cut that part out or change that part. And so I'll keep iterating on the webinar until I get a nice smooth retention graph. And I'm also looking at the number of people who inside of Wistia, when you get to the point in your webinar and you say, but you're not going to pay that amount. Your price today is blank. And the link pops up inside the video. So it's at exactly the right time. You can tell how many people click that link. And so I'm looking at the conversion rate of that webinar. And I'm also looking at the purchase rate. So of the people who clicked, how many are buying, which is a reflection of how good a job both my webinar, but also my sales page are doing. So those systems are really key to understanding what's actually going through, or getting a sense for what's actually going through your customers' minds on their way into joining your program.
Thank you. I'm mesmerized because like this, like I'm just like taking it all in because like this is so like, fascinating and like absolutely true to me. Okay, but like I'll start wrapping up. What is the next for the program? Like, what are you working on like next? Like, what's in the store?
Well, nothing new. It's better, the same but better. So we have now 3 separate offers. One is just the click testing portion. It's for every author under the sun. It's actually for every business owner under the sun because it's what allows you to really understand what your market is motivated by, what transformations they want to achieve that your business can help with, and what language they're using when they think about that. Because that matters. Like if you're saying the right thing in the wrong words, people won't feel like it resonates with them. So that's the first portion. That's for every business owner. That single process, it takes like 2 weeks. It has changed so many lives. It's producing like 125, $150 million a year extra now. It's crazy. So that's the first portion. And then the second portion is for people who have a lot of books and want to sell them. We have a direct sales program where you can sell directly from your Shopify store. So we take you through all of that for authors who write a large number of books and want to make their money primarily through writing books. And I have a lot of experience building funnels and working with information businesses, building funnels. And so that's our other offer for nonfiction authors who wrote their book in order to promote their business. And that program focuses 100% not on selling your book to promote your business. It focuses 100% on building a profitable customer acquisition process and funnel that may or may not actually even involve your book. It doesn't have to. In fact, in many cases in 2024, it's harder to get somebody to buy your book first and then go buy your course. It's usually easier for the vast majority of businesses just to advertise your core business product. So that's what that nonfiction program focuses on. It's for information business owners, service providers, like professional service providers, course creators, people along those lines. So that's it. And that's enough. That's plenty. It keeps me busy. Like market testing for everybody.
Absolutely.
People want to sell lots of books, and then people want to sell lots of courses or services, or write lots of wills, or professional service providers, or any of the above.
Amazing. Thank you. I so love like how systematic you are and like how methodical you are. It's like, to me, it's music to my ears. Thank you so much, Steve. It's been so incredible talking to you. I'm just like holding myself back from asking more questions, but I'll let you go, and thank you so very much. And I will link to the program underneath the interview, so we'll provide our viewers more information about the courses. And I'm so happy to send you more people, just because the Cure program is incredible. Thank you so very
Beautiful.
much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your interest. You're a great host. Very gracious. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.